Okay, everybody. Hello and welcome to the yard. Thank you all for joining us. We're letting people in from the waiting room, so uh, it's going to take a little bit of time to get everybody in here. So let's just hang in there for a few minutes and we'll be good to go. Some of the people who are here now, I recognize as friends, which is nice. Hi, Roxanne, I see you here, and Katie from our team.
Roxy, Katie.
Yeah. And a bunch of others. So Craig, Seth, all of our friends. It's nice to have you all. All right, Age, should I get started?
Yes.
All right. Well, once again, welcome everybody to the yard. My name is Richard Bronson. I'm one of your hosts tonight. I'm the founder and CEO of 70 Million Jobs, which is the first national for-profit employment platform for people with criminal records, and also Commissary Club, which is the first social network for people with criminal records. As usual, I am joined by my two friends and teammates at Commissary Club. And number one, we have the big man, Seth Sundberg. Hey, Seth. Seth, for those of you who have not been following his career in the NBA, Seth used to play for the LA Lakers with a young Kobe Bryant. And we have my other friend, Divine, the famous Divine, who is currently the rage of Clubhouse, that other popular social network. Divine is a well-known rap artist, and he's also a prominent tech entrepreneur, as well as working on our team. And all three of us have in common the fact that we've all done time. What's the yard all about? When you're in prison, you spend a lot of time hanging out in the yard, and you're just hanging out with your friends, basically. Sometimes they're not your friends, and sometimes that's a problem. And the yard is the period of time that you have on a daily basis, assuming you're not in lockdown, like many people are these days because of the coronavirus, or because you're in solitary, which, for example, Seth has spent years in when he was in prison. But it's the time for you to go outside and get some fresh air and hang out, and play ball if you want, or, just hang out with your friends. And sometimes when you're out in the yard, you're crying, and sometimes you're laughing, and sometimes you're yelling. And sometimes you're talking about important things, and sometimes you're talking about the stupidest things imaginable, quite frankly. It's a time, though, to connect, and to connect with some fresh air. It's a very precious time for all of us. We are joined tonight with somebody I'm really excited to have on. And his story is pretty amazing. But what makes it even more amazing to me personally is that at one point he and I were very good friends. His name is Irving Stitsky. And about 30 years ago, he and I worked together, and we were partners at the infamous Wolf of Wall Street firm, Stratton Oakmont, that you probably saw in the Martin Scorsese movie. So he and I went through all of that insanity that you saw there. About 10 years ago, Irv was convicted of, I think it was a fraud case relating to a real estate company that he was involved with. And it was a federal conviction. And typically when people are charged by the federal government, to cop to a plea agreement. In other words, agree that you were guilty, and in consideration of your accepting that plea deal, typically you're going to get a sentence that is less than perhaps you would have had you pursued a case in court and lost. Irv, so most people, 98% of, I think is the number, will choose to accept the plea deal and go to prison. Irv, however, decided that he, for whatever reason, and he can tell us why, he was going to take his chances in court. And Irv went to a jury trial, and Irv lost the case, and he received an 85-year prison sentence rather than accepting the 7 years. So the same person could have had 7 years, but instead, because he wanted to defend himself, which is a constitutional right, he got 85 years. That alone is pretty incredible and frightening and sad. But the story took a strange turn about a week and a half ago. Irv was in his cell in prison, and a guard came by and told him to pack up his belongings because he was leaving. Why? Because the White House just called. And they actually do make a phone call, the White House. Hello, it's the White House calling. And they told the person in charge that Irv had just received a pardon from President Trump. And pack up your stuff because you're getting out of here. And that night, his family, I guess, came by, picked him up, and Irv that night spent the evening, went to sleep in a bed at his sister's home in Connecticut. And Irv has been out of prison now for about a week and a half from his essentially a life sentence, 85 years. Pretty amazing. So we want to talk about that with Irv, certainly, and lots of other stuff that's going on. So what I'd like you to do, and I personally, I hate when people ask me to do it in a group setting, but I'm asking everybody here to do it. If you could just close your eyes just for 1 second, a couple of seconds. And, if you've been to prison, I'd love you to just sort of put yourself back, in that time. It wasn't necessarily something you want to remember, but, there were bad times when we were all in prison, but sometimes there was some fun and there was some good times. And imagine the good times that you're out in the yard and you walk over to where, your crew is hanging out, because that's where they hung out yesterday and they're going to hang out there tomorrow. And maybe it's at a picnic table outside, or maybe it's on some bleachers or wherever. And that's where you go, where the people with the friends that you've made, that's where they are. So imagine that you're there. And if you've never been to prison, just imagine, you've been locked up for years. And every day is just the same thing, day after day after day. And about all you have going for you is that really nice hour and a half every day that you can just get out in some fresh air. And imagine that that's what you're going through. And there you are, and you open your eyes, and there are your buddies, they're your friends, and people are walking around. And there's your old friend Irv. So the first thing I got to do is I got to say, Irv, welcome the fuck home. How are you, brother?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And it's great to be home. How am I? I mean, I'm on top of the world right now. Life is great. An amazing thing. I was blessed. I don't know who to thank first, God or Trump. And no, Trump's not God, but, he did a great thing. And, the stories that we used to talk about on the yard, everybody there had a story. 90% of the guys were innocent. Nobody ever committed any of the crimes that they were in jail for.
We talk about that all the time.
I didn't do it.
I was innocent, Irv. They didn't find me with no dope.
It's like, I didn't do it. You got to hear my story. And, you hear the stories and sometimes your hearts go out to guys and sometimes they don't. But, like Rich said, he and I know one another for a long time. He left out part of it before he started 70 million jobs. He was working for another company and he came to do it. And I was in the audience listening to his presentation and I was breaking his balls because he didn't recognize me. And I kept asking questions and kept interrupting him. And he's like, he's thinking to himself, who is this SOB breaking my balls? And
Yeah.
I just
Sounds
kept
like
going.
Richard.
I was working at a nonprofit organization at the time. It's called Defy Ventures. That is fairly well known and prominent in the nonprofit space relating to reentry. And part of my job was to go into prisons and just talk to people, including what to expect when they were coming out and, whatever. And Irv was at a medium security prison at the time, I believe. And medium security has got some serious, inmates. Many of them were, prior to being in a medium, were at a high level security, who had done all kinds of unspeakable things, although nobody really did anything, because like Irv said, everybody's innocent in prison. So I'm giving a speech, and I'm talking to this crowd of hundreds of inmates. And there are guys who have swastikas on their faces, and there are all kinds of like scary looking guys. There must have been 200-300 people in this, it's like in the cafeteria or something, sitting on these chairs, row upon row. And there's one guard overseeing the whole thing. And he's like all the way at the end on his cell phone, talking to his girlfriend or whatever. So I make sure to tell them very early on that, number one, I have a record. And number two, when the feds came to me and said, hey, if you give us information about other cases, if you wear a wire, if you help set up other people, then you won't have to go to prison. So I made sure that everyone there knew that I chose not to do that.
You weren't a rat.
I wasn't a rat, which in prison is the number one thing that makes you a good guy or a bad guy. So I'm a good guy. When I announced that, everyone stood up and was cheering. So because I knew if I screw up, this could go south very, very easily.
Right, you might not have left if you chose a different path.
Right. Especially with you going boo in the back.
Right. So there's this guy there, and I don't have the greatest eyesight, and it's like sort of far away. And there's a guy in a wheelchair, as a matter of fact, at the time you were in a wheelchair, and this Q&A, and he asks me a question. And it's like just some obnoxious, stupid thing. But I can't react like it's obnoxious and stupid, because the crowd's going to turn on me and I'm going to be dead in seconds. So I have to be on my best behavior and go, oh, that's an interesting question, when in fact it was the stupidest question you could ask. But he doesn't let it go. He keeps going and going. And I just keep having to answer these stupid questions on and on. Well, at the end of it, of course, all these guys want to connect and they want to meet you and they want to, hear, how can I get in touch with you when I get out, and can you help me, and all kinds of stuff like that. And then this guy rolls up in his wheelchair and he looks up to me. He goes, "You didn't recognize me, did you?" And I go, "No, who are?" And then I look at him and I realize it's my old friend Irv. And Irv and I used to, all I can tell you saw Wolf of Wall Street. That was he and I doing that. And that was us. And there's poor Irv. And I had heard that Irv was back in prison, but I didn't really know that much about it. I go, I had no idea I was going to see him. And I said to him, "How long are you in for?" And you told me, like, at that point, it was like 81 years. He said 81 years. And I go, "What? Like no one gets an 81-year sentence." And then of course he told me about the story. So man, I can't even imagine. So, what's been the biggest surprise for you since you've been out?
Well, I'm sure everybody knows, because every day this technology changes. So the biggest shock to me so far is the technology on top of this pandemic. I mean, in prison, they addressed the pandemic. When it first struck ourselves 24/7, no relief. I mean, they came around and they'd open up like 6 cells at a time because each pod, each unit had 6 different shower stalls. So they'd open up 6 cells at a time, and you'd go take a shower, and you're in the shower for 10 minutes. And for those of you who have experienced prison, you know, there's guys in there that they think they're on their honeymoon when they go in the shower. They're in there for like an hour. You know, who knows what they're doing in there. So we got like 10 minutes in the shower and then got hustled back into the room. They brought your meals to the room. No more exercising except for whatever you do in your room. And you want to try to coordinate it on the day that you get a shower. And there's no more commissary. You can't buy commissary. So you have to eat what they give you. And, you know, I'm from the Jewish faith. So I ate common fare meals, which is a religious diet. So that food was not very nutritional. So during the pandemic, without having the weights, without eating properly, I lost 45 pounds and a lot of muscle size, because, you know, that's what you do when you're not studying or working on your case. Some guys choose to sit in front of the TV and eat a bag of chips all day long. And some guys want to, you know, program, and some guys want to educate themselves. I did a lot of programming. I facilitated a lot of programs. I mentored a lot of young guys. I found it healthy for me, you know, to use my time properly. So I committed myself more to my faith and to God. A lot of guys kind of fake it when they do that. They find a religion so they can hide in the religion, because certain guys had certain crimes, and they find it easier and feel more protected when they're surrounded, especially in a medium prison or in a USP, which is a high security prison. So they join groups and cliques and gangs to feel safe. I was in a prison where there was a lot of violence, a lot of stabbings, a lot of gangs. And over a period of time, we saw the prison change. So it got to be a little bit more lax, should I say, because they started to weed out the gang members, and now it became a gang dropout yard. And the people and the population changed. We began to talk on this yard meeting here about going outside and talking to people. And you heard every story you could possibly hear about guys' backgrounds. And Rich spoke a little bit about me choosing to go to trial. That's not 100% true. I mean, I was requesting aggressively a plea agreement because I knew the system already. Unfortunately, I had done a short stint in the federal system already because of my history in the stock business. And I met someone in prison when I finally made my way into a prison camp, which is a very minimum security system. I met a guy also from my same religious faith who, you know, had 3 daughters, and, you know, he was convicted of bank fraud. And he talked to me about, you know, he asked a lot of people in the prison that I was at. There were a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of stockbrokers, a lot of, you know, bank guys, investment bankers. And Rich will even know one name. I'll mention a guy by the name Alan Novick. He was at this prison when I got there. And, you know, I had a reputation of being a high producer in the stock business. So this guy came to me and he introduced himself. And the first thing he said to me was, you know, do you think you could raise money to develop real estate? So I said to him, you know, quite frankly, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I used to pitch stocks to guys that I didn't even believe the stock would go up. But to sell a guy a piece of a brick, a piece of concrete, a piece of an investment in real estate, everybody talks about real estate and how it's the return over a period of time. You'll always see your money back and a profit. So I said to him, that's a no-brainer. So he asked me to put together a business plan. I wrote a business plan. I gave it to him and his partner. And they asked me to join forces with them when we got out of prison. Quite frankly, there was another guy that they wanted to recruit after I did all the work. And, you know, I was like, okay, no big deal. But then they came to me and they asked me to join them. We went to go to a firm in the city, another firm that Rich might remember, a firm by the name of Gersten Savage, which is a law firm. Well, you know, there's a gray area, there's a black area, there's a white area. You know, you could do this, you can't do this. And I said to him, look, I just got out of prison. I'm not interested in any gray areas. I want to, do this right. I don't want to go back to prison. I have 4 kids, I got divorced when I went to prison, but I still, was a father and wanted to be with my children. And they came up with a concept that we could do this business and not have a gray area. So I joined forces with this guy and we built a business. And quite candidly, we were raising money hand over fist. We bought 4,000 apartments in Houston, Texas area, and we took that under our management and ownership. We bought 8 buildings in South Beach, Miami that we were going to convert to either condos or condo hotels during a very hot market. And we were on our way to greatness. And some guy who knew somebody that I hired to work for us was in trouble. And when the guy that I hired to work for us contacted him to make an investment or to refer investors, he decided to wear a wire, come in and tell the federal government that what we're doing is impossible. They just can't be doing this, can't be legitimate. And they took his word for it. And they came in and they raided our firm after being in business over almost 3 years. And it was a shock to everybody. They said that we were running a Ponzi scheme. And the funny thing is that when they seized all our properties and our computer, hard drives, and took all of our documents that they had, they realized, oh my God, these guys are really developing real estate. They bought property. They're converting these properties. They're rehabbing these properties. What can we charge them with now? Because we raided this firm and we caused all this chaos. So they found out that in the investment material, we didn't disclose our history. And by advice of counsel, we were told because we were acting in a consulting capacity with the company, we didn't have to disclose our history. So that being said, our lawyers tried to negotiate with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the U.S. government, the assistant U.S. attorney handling the case, that we'd pay any fines for non-disclosure and we'd move forward and we're running a legitimate business, but they weren't having it. So 3 months later, after raiding the firm, they agreed to let us continue to operate. And 3 months later, they came in with arrest warrants and arrested us.
Yeah.
It took them 3 years back and forth. Devon, you wanted to ask something?
Absolutely. I got to chime in right there. You said that it took them 3 years?
Yeah.
Before they came with arrest warrants after they had raided you?
No, they raided us on December 1st, 2005. On March 27th, 2006, 3 months later, we were in business 3 years. We were in business 3 years.
Okay.
And then on March 27th, they came in and arrested us. And what's funny is I reported everything to probation. I told them where I was working, who I was working with, brought them copies of my paychecks, copies of all the investment memorandum, everything. So I didn't get violated when I was arrested. My associate, my co-defendant, was violated because he lied to his probation officer. But that's a story in itself. So after they raided us, we were arrested. I was out on bail. I had certain restrictions. They put me on a bracelet. So I was confined to home confinement with certain restrictions and took 3 years to go to trial. During that time period, they offered me a plea. And the first plea was 10 to 12 years. And my indictment was a 2-count indictment. I was facing 20 years. And so I said to them, Tony Soprano them, I was like, if you want to offer me 10 to 12 years, like, go screw yourself, And, they said, well, take it or leave it. I said, well, I'm not interested. 10 to 12 years, I'll take my chance in court. And if I lose, you give me 20 years, I'll take my chance. So 3 years goes by while we're out, we're preparing for trial. And they come back a month or two before my trial date is scheduled. Well, the trial date was postponed 3 or 4 times, for whatever reasons, our reasons, their reasons, and they come back to me and they offer me. I say to them, okay, you offer me 7. What's the actual plea? 7 to 9 years. okay, what are you offering my co-defendant, who's the lead guy in the case? What'd you offer him? And they said they offered him 5 to 7 years. So I said, 5 to 7 years? Huh, interesting. Why would they offer me more time than the guy that's got his name all over all the documents, that he's involved in everything? Why would they offer him less money? I said, go get me the same plea and I'll sign tomorrow.
Right.
It took 2 months. I finally called and chased down my lawyer because it was the end of the year. I remember when he called me with a 7 to 9 year plea, it was right around Thanksgiving of 2008. And he said, you know, you're going to have to self-surrender if you accept this plea. I said, no problem. He goes, well, you're going to miss Thanksgiving. You're going to miss Christmas. I said, look, I'm going to miss the next 3 too, right? I'm going to miss the next 7. I'm going to miss the next whatever it is. So what's one extra? Go see if you could get me the same plea. I didn't hear from the guy. Next thing you know, I'm on the phone with him. What's with the plea? He says, look, your co-defendant turned down his 5 to 7 year plea. I said, what? He goes, yeah, they wanted a global settlement. And now that they can't get a global settlement from all 3 of you, we're going to trial. Now, I believed him, but you know, in the long run, hindsight, the guy wanted to go to trial because he's a paid attorney. He's getting paid, you know.
No.
So we prepared. It took 3 years to prepare for this trial. I didn't really want to go to trial. It wasn't by choice, but I was forced to go to trial. And during trial, the government made an incredible presentation of their case. You know, they have unlimited funds. They put up a big, you know, board up on the wall, and they showed where all the money went. And unbeknownst to me, because I was taking a nominal in the finance business, any of you that know the finance industry know that you reap high benefits and rewards when you raise capital. And I wasn't paying myself that way because I was looking at a future of this business. So I was paying myself like 150 grand a year. And in the finance business, you spend that in like 2 months on entertainment. So, you know, I was taking a nominal amount of money. So when we finally went to trial, I found out that my co-defendant was taking millions.
Wow.
You know, and all the time I'm like, leave the money in the business, leave the money in the business. And one day I said to him, like, why don't we get cars, you know? And he's like, well, what kind of car you want? And I'm like, well, when we reach the 20 million mark, I want a Bentley GT, bro. So he's like, great. So one day I'm at an investment seminar and he calls me on the phone and he goes, hey, listen, I got you a car. And I'm like, what? You got me a car? He says, yeah, I got a Super Sport Range Rover. And I'm like, what'd you do that for without talking to me about it? I thought we decided we're not going to get cars because we don't want to bring attention to the company. We want to leave the money in the company. I had already gone out with money that I had saved from my previous life and bought my wife a 2006 Navigator. And I got myself a BMW 6 Series convertible. And this guy gets me a car without even talking to me about it. Like, and the bottom line is he did it because he got one for himself. But at trial, it came out that he got 2. He took the one that he bought from me, gave it to his wife, and he bought 2 Porsches at the same time. That he didn't talk to me.
So that's the issue with the global, like a global plea. It's the first time I've actually heard that, where they're trying to get everybody to plea on the same thing. And
yeah, they wanted to get rid of the case all at one time and not have to go to trial with one guy.
To agree to take it.
All right.
So he denied it, and it turns out that, you know, that they were going to violate him. So whatever, even if his plea was 5 to 7 years, which is what they offered him, he would have actually ended up with 7 to 9 because he was going to have to face 2 years in the state for a violation.
Oh shit!
All right,
But
listen. I don't want this to be an 85-year recitation of your case.
No, we're done. We're at that point
Okay,
now.
so what I want to know is, you're at trial. Were you defended well? Did you feel? Did your lawyer do a good job?
I think my lawyer failed in certain areas, like when they put up where the money went. He could have simply, you know, they accused me of being a partner, and I was responsible for everything and anything that took place. And my lawyer pointed to government's own chart and said, hey, this guy got $3.5 million and Stitsky got 500 grand. How could you
Okay.
say they're equal partners? But he didn't do that.
By
All right.
association.
Failed in certain areas. I mean,
So the defense rested and the jury went out to deliberate. How long did they take to deliberate?
2 hours.
Okay, that's never a good sign.
Never a good sign.
And they came out and they said that they found you guilty on 2 charges?
On 5 counts.
5 counts. Okay.
1 count
And-
with a 5-year cap and 4 counts with 20-year caps.
Okay. And at that point, you're starting to think this is not going the way you had hoped. How much later was it until that you had a sentencing before the judge?
Well, interesting enough, I was out on bail for 3 years waiting for the trial. And then at trial, when they came back with the guilty verdict, the judge remanded me. So there was no warning. There was no go home and get your affairs in order.
Right.
I was remanded and taken down in the elevator and incarcerated on the spot.
Okay.
And let's see, that was November of 2009. 2008. And I was sentenced, no, 2009, I apologize. And I was sentenced in July of 2010.
And they ran these things consecutively.
They ran them consecutively. And here's where the good part comes. After I was sentenced, everybody's jaw dropped. My lawyer's jaw.
Wait, we got to talk about that. So you went for the sentencing hearing, right?
My family's in the courtroom.
Your family's in the courtroom. Are you wearing a prison outfit at this point?
No.
They let you wear a suit?
I put on a suit and a tie, and
Okay.
and you know who made my suits, Rich?
Yeah. You had our suit guy. And
Yeah,
but
who's
you
the suit
wore-
guy, Rich? I want to know the suit guy.
I don't know.
Was it shiny? Were the suits shiny? I can imagine you guys in some shiny suits.
Come on, man. You got to know us better than that, Seth. We didn't have shiny shoots. Divine wore shiny shoots.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
Divine did wear shiny suits.
So, okay. So you in handcuffs or no?
No handcuffs, standing
Okay.
there, suit and a tie.
Okay. So the judge goes, will the defendant rise? And you stand up there, which is one of the worst moments of the whole process.
Let's discuss this. When my lawyer came to visit me, I said, well, what do you think I'm facing? We filed a sentencing memorandum. We used case law. Other cases that, presided before me that were far greater in financial crimes and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, what do you think I'm facing? And the first time he came to visit me, he says, she's probably going to give you 12 years. So I'm like saying to myself, that's terrible, but, it's doable.
You can live with it. You can live with 12 years.
Right.
You were how old at that point?
Pardon me?
You were how old at that point?
50. I was 55 at that point.
So you'd be getting out and you were
12 years, you
67,
can-
less
okay.
15%, you'd be 65 years old. more or
So,
less.
so I'm like, and then you're like, he was ready to file the memorandum. And I'm like, wait. Now that I've been in jail for 7 months, I've been in a law library every day. Before you file anything, I want to read it. Right. So I insisted that he read it and bring it back to me, that he bring it back to me when he finished. And I gave him a bunch of case law that I researched. So he added my case law to his memorandum, and he came back to visit me. And I go, let's talk about this again. What do you think I'm facing? And he goes, oh, you're probably going to get 15. So I lost my temper right there. I'm like, wait, you just gave me 3 more years.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even see the judge yet. You gave
Yeah, what'd I do?
Your lawyer's sentencing you.
All right. So you have your day in court. Your family is there. Everybody's upset. You're nervous. You were expecting 12 years, maybe 15 years. You stand up there. The judge gives you the chance to say whatever it is you want to say. And do you understand? And blah, 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 all this shit. And then finally he goes, okay, I'm ready to render my sentence. Okay. And he said what?
Well, it was she, and she said, first of all, she said, you're a terrible con man. And I think that the only way to avert
That's not a good,
you from,
that's not a
because
good
not a good-
start.
not a good start.
Unless you were
The
saying like
only
you're
way
terrible
to
con man,
avoid-
like, that's a good thing.
The only way to avoid you doing anything to anybody, in the count of my first count, which was 0 to 5, I sentence you to 5 years. In count 2, securities fraud, I sentence you to 20 years. In count 3, securities fraud, another securities fraud, I sentence you to 20 years.
Oh,
In count 4, wire fraud, I sentence you to 20 years. In count 5, mail fraud, I sentence you to 20 years, and I run them all consecutive.
God, that's the
And
daggone.
we're all there, and everybody's jaw drops, and you can hear a pin drop. I look at my lawyer, and the guy turns white like a ghost. And the
Yo.
prosecutor is looking at my family. The prosecutor, like, what is going on? Like, they thought I was going to get like 10 years. They weren't even asking for a harsh sentence for me. So I get the sentence. I'm in shock. My family's in shock. Everybody's crying. I get taken out. They bring me downstairs. You know, I don't know if anybody knows, but in the Southern District, the building, the courthouse is attached to Manhattan Metropolitan Correctional MCC. So I get brought to that prison. I had been held in Brooklyn, in MDC, awaiting sentencing. So they transferred me back over there after a week. And, you know, it was shocking. Of course, we filed an appeal and all of that stuff. And, you know, I was waiting to be designated. Now all this time goes by just to speed things up. And of course, I do all of these things in prison, and I file appeals, and I file 2255s, and I do all that stuff. And I hire out of my own pocket investigators. And we find out that there's a correlation between me somehow and my old firm where I worked and the judge's family.
oh.
Somehow, some way.
Like they lost money from the old firm.
Oh,
They lost
the plot
money.
thickens.
Someone lost money at the firm with a broker that, you know, worked there. I didn't handle the account. They couldn't say, well, Irv Stitsky lost me money. That wasn't the case. But the vendetta was against the firm and all the people that worked there. And we kind of weighed that on, that's how and why I may have gotten the sentence. There's no hard evidence to prove that's the case. So, and the judges are protected because they're appointed by presidents and so on and so forth. So they're immune to anything that has anything to do with your case. So, you know, it is what it is. I suck it up. The president came to my rescue.
You're supposed to be protected too, right? But I read somewhere that they went after one of your lawyers. Is that true?
Well, they didn't really go after the lawyer. I'm not sure where you read that. Maybe if you could tell me more specifics, I could clarify that.
I thought that one of the attorneys got started getting prosecuted as well.
I will tell you that it got to be push and shove. You know, there were some people that got involved in my case, and I was literally getting visits from lawyers telling me that the judge is going to grant me my 2255, which was an ineffective assistance of counsel claim that I filed. And it was a strong claim about the whole plea negotiation. And I literally, just so you guys know, I threw a party. Like there's 160 guys in my pod, and I bought pizza for everyone. Like pizza pies and sodas and juices. And
You were
like,
able to get pizza into where you were?
They sold pizza and the pizza kits that were microwavable. So I bought them in commissary. Like there's 160 guys and 2 pies come in a pack. So I bought like 80 packs of pizza, right? And everybody got their own pizza. And I bought sodas, and I bought, you know, I spent hundreds of dollars because I'm being told like in 2 days, she's going to grant you 2255 and you're going to go home. So I throw this.
Exactly what she said. She called you an invertebrate con man, unable and unlikely to change. This is what she said about you. I don't agree with her because I'm learning your character right now, and I really like your character, your spirit. And what's interesting about your story is you're telling the tale of how the feds did some underhanded maneuvers and basically, like, you know, positioned you in a way where you became a fall guy in a large sense, if I'm correct. A lot of people that I've met in prison, and not in the sense of, you know, lying or whatever the case may be, have also faced a similar circumstances where the feds really do underhanded bullshit, if you would. You know what I mean? I was a victim of that, whether it was the attorneys, the federal probation, whatever it was, that kind of did things that weren't really like above board. You know what I mean? And the
Absolutely.
way you're describing how things went down is really, really suspect on the federal government side. And a lot of people think that the federal government win their cases just straight and narrow. And that's really never the case. That's really never the case. Although they have a high conviction rate because people take plea deals, it's really never the case that everything is one, you know what I'm saying, straight and narrow. Whether that's from the investigative, detectives, agents, whatever it is that investigated your case, that brings the complaint to the federal level, and then you know, whether it's the prosecutor. So I feel where you're coming from when you're expressing how things went down with your case.
Divine, you're 100% right, because I'll give you an example that we found out after the fact. The government brought in an independent, as we did. We brought independent forensic specialists, and the government brought in an accountant who reviewed all our books, our bank records, and so on and so forth. And they asked her to testify at trial. And they came to us and said, well, this woman's sick, and we need to get someone else to stand in, and will you stipulate to allow this other person to present the numbers and all the work that she did. So the fact that they said she was sick and wasn't well, we weren't going to say, hey, no, you can't bring anyone else in. This woman's sick. We're not going to force you to make her come and testify when she's ill. We wanted to show compassion. So we let this other person come in. And it turned out after the fact, when we did some investigating, that the woman was never sick. The woman refused to cow down to what they wanted her to do. They wanted her to testify that we stole money and we did certain things.
Right.
And she didn't want to perjure herself and do that. So she asked to be removed from the case. And instead of, they made up a story that she was sick.
Wow.
Because we tracked her down, and she told the truth because she's an independent. She's like moved out of the state. She lives like in somewhere like in Arizona or New Mexico or somewhere. I don't remember really where, but she told the investigators the truth. And it was just amazing when we found this out. I mean, there's nothing I could do about that now. It's after the fact, you know.
All right, Irv. So let me, I want to keep it real here. Okay. And you know, we heard the story of how you got in trouble. And you started it by talking about you go to prison and everybody is innocent. And either everybody is innocent or some people are not necessarily speaking, you know, the entire story. When I went to prison, for example, and you knew what I went to prison for, I was fucking guilty. And if anything, they didn't get me for everything that they could have gotten me on. So if they made a technical mistake here or there, they missed out on 20 things that they could have gotten me on. So all in all, you know, I sort of, but I was guilty. I was the one guy in prison guilty. So I worked with you at Stratton, and you and I did the same stuff there. And it was, for the most part, crooked what we were doing. And we were working with a crooked enterprise with people who were doing crooked shit, okay? That's then. I don't know what you've done thereafter, but I'm hearing you talk about how you only made 150 grand, for example. Now, you and I have made a lot more money in our day than that.
Correct.
But a lot of people would say 150 grand, you know, that's not a bad salary. And when people would say, well, he got me a Range Rover, and you wanted a Bentley, you know, what the hell's wrong with a Range Rover? That's not such a bad thing.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right.
And let
You're
me just
100%
finish
right.
here. Let me just finish here because I need to say this because I want to say what some people are going to be thinking, and probably have, because people have said to me when they heard that you were coming on the yard, and people have said that this is a guy who was white, who had the money, who had the connections to get this pardon. What about the people who really have never done anything wrong, who don't have the connections, who are not white, who are not educated, et cetera, et cetera? And so my question to you, you know, so I'm not sure how honestly, I'm thrilled that you get out because I know you personally and I know you have a good heart. And I know you did 10 years, and 10 years is enough. It's enough for anybody, for anything. You know, whatever benefit society gets out of punishing a person, they get it after 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, you did your time. 85 years is, I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. Okay. It's surreal. It's not human. But what do you say to people who say, hey, you know, you're a guy who's managed to get into trouble. And, you know, what about the people who were in prison, who had a public defender, who didn't do anything for them and ended up, you know, maybe are completely innocent or whatever, and they're not getting the pardons, and here you did. Tell me why it's okay you did and they didn't.
Well, there's never going to be a good explanation as to why I did and they didn't. My heart goes out to them because the prison system is extremely flawed. The justice system is extremely flawed. People are getting charged with crimes because of race and religion and political belief. And it's an unfortunate environment and circumstance that we find ourselves in. And what I say to everyone is never give up. You know, I never gave up from day one. I always thought and I always fought and told my children who came to visit me religiously and my family members who came to visit me that I'm going to get out somehow, some way. I mean, I knew that this judge had it in for me from what Divine even read to you. She said at my sentencing, when I filed a compassionate release, when everyone, lawyers and medical experts said that I meet all the criteria for the First Step Back compassionate release, and the judge and the United States government both conceded that I met all the criteria, but they said that by releasing me, I'd be a menace to society, I'd be a danger to the community. When in fact, the same judge and the same court district was releasing terrorists and people that committed murder under compassionate release. In my own district, a guy that shot 7 people and killed a bunch of them just got released on a compassionate release after 20 years on a double life sentence. But the judge thought that I was a danger to society. So, you know, it's an unfortunate situation that we're dealing with the justice system. I will do everything in my power now that I'm out to be an activist in that arena.
What is
I
it
know
that
a
you
lot
want to accomplish having gone through this? What's your message?
I really want people not to give up hope. I want them to know that every day laws, regulations, and statutes are changing. There's always rumbling in the prison system, like in the yard, about how 85% is going to go to 65%. How
Why are you laughing, Seth?
The crack law's gonna
I can
change.
imagine,
Right.
Roy.
They're gonna
Inmate.com must have been going on
Right.
fire.
Inmate.com, they're going to
Holy
cap violent crimes at 25 to 30 years. Like guys that have, like I know a guy that, he was involved in a case that was considered murder for hire. And the reason it turned to murder for hire is because somebody said, hey, this guy owes me a lot of money. Can you help me get it? And he called that guy, and the guy went and put pressure on him. And 5 days later, after the guy went to the hospital, after they beat him up a little bit, the guy died. So they changed it from an assault case to a murder for hire, and the guy got a life sentence. And he didn't do the physical violence, but he was involved in the circle.
Yeah.
And the guy's done 30 years, and he's 70 years old, and he feels like his life's over. And I said to him, "You've got to file a compassionate release. Murderers are being released who pulled the trigger."
Yeah.
So guys like that I've spoken to and that I have met, I mean, they just let a guy out, 86 years old, because he was a mob guy. Like, what is he? He's 86 years old. Like, what's he going to do when he gets out? He can barely walk. Like, you got to see this guy walking up the hill. Like, he never leaves the unit because he'll like have a heart attack just walking up the hill to get to the commissary. So, I mean, it's just, we need to be more active. We need to be heard. We need to, get our senators and our congressmen involved in what's going on. They need to know what's really happening in this environment and in the system, and how people are being treated and how they're being housed and what's going on in these places, and how can we make it more humane. I learned a very good lesson when I left. When I was indicted, I moved to upstate New York, and I became like a country boy. And, I mowed my own lawn. My whole lifestyle changed, and I became just a simple guy who wasn't chasing money anymore.
Were you happier?
150 times happier.
Okay, so I want to ask a question now. So, you've been through this experience, which is a harrowing experience. You do have a criminal record, so it's not like you did one crime and you never been in trouble before. You have past crimes that you committed. You've been in federal prison prior to this. How do you feel like this time? Do you feel like you rehabilitated? And what changes have you really made internally that's going to change?
In other words, he's asking you nicely, are you going to get in trouble again?
You know what, Divine? That's a great question. And the simple answer to that is yes. I mean, I learned my lesson in the first 2 years in prison, let alone the last 11, going on 12. And my involvement with other inmates and facilitating programs. Listen, I taught parenting to guys that, have 3 different baby mamas. I taught, programs called GOGI, which is an acronym for getting out by going in, and other programs called Victim Impact, where there's a 32-week session and then there's another 8-week session, and it's about your first questions that you ask these guys is like, do you consider yourself a victim? The first day that they come to our class. And you know what? We have them fill out this piece of paper, and 97% of the guys write, yes, I'm a victim. So, of course, I go around the room on the first day, and I'm like, okay, hey, Rich, why do you think you're a victim? He said, well, I had a rat in my case, and he told on me. So I'm like, how does that make you a victim? Did you still sell drugs? What about the girl that you sold drugs to who was pregnant, and now she's doing crack and gives birth to a crack baby, and you and her brother told on you because he didn't want you to sell crack to her anymore. So now you're a victim?
Right.
Like, how does your wife, your girlfriend, your baby's mama, your kids, your mother, your father, your sister feel about having to send you money in prison? Who's the victim? You or them?
Irv, I really believe that you can take this opportunity and this blessing that's sent from heaven. You know what I mean? It's no other doubt about it, sent from heaven, or whatever you might believe. I know you're religious. But I think you could take this blessing and use it as a platform to not only reinvent your life, but also inspire and motivate other people who've been through the system to be like, wow, this dude was facing 85 years. And the most hated president pardoned him. You know what I'm saying? And now it's like, what are you going to do with your life? You have a responsibility, man, to the community of people who've been incarcerated and who you have this opportunity, you have this responsibility. How do you see yourself in that role?
Great question. And I've thought about this long and hard. And I said to myself when I got out, because this victim impact program has helped so many guys in federal prison, especially in the prison where I was. And I promised myself, I reached out to the company that originated, and they're from California. And they sent me all of the documentation along with everything that I compiled from facilitating the program for 9 years. And I swore that when I got out, that I was going to market and network myself with probation departments, with judges' chambers, sending letters, because there are guys that come up into courts. And I'll give you an example. A guy goes in front of a judge, and the judge says, "What do you have to say for yourself?" And he says, "Your Honor, I'm a drug addict. I've been doing drugs, and I robbed this bank because I have no money and I needed a fix. And I took the $800 from the teller." I'll give you an example. There was a guy in prison that I met, a young kid in his 20s. He hit 8 convenience stores in one night, got $100 from each convenience store. So a total of $800, and he got 8 years. And it was all because he wanted to feed his drug addiction. So a perfect example is how, some judges would turn around to that person and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to send you to rehab this time, and I'm going to see if we can fix you before I send you and put you into the prison system." So with that being said, I thought, well, maybe I could take this a step further. And I could say to the judge, because these judges order the government to pay for these programs, for these guys to go to drug counseling and drug programs and outpatient programs, and they pay for that. So I'm saying to myself, oh, I can set up this type of program for victim impact and teach them what their crimes are doing to their friends, family, and the people that they are involved with that have some type of attachment to their crime. And if I can do that, maybe I can reach them, because I saw how many guys I reached. I mean, I had violent gang members that committed violent crimes, that had lengthy sentences for committing murders, and came to this program and thanked me and hugged me and like, "You know what? I can't wait to get on the phone with my son and tell him he better not join that gang in Chicago, because he'll end up like me." Like, they woke up. It was like a wake-up call for them when we went through this program. And it talked about everything from drug dealing to burglary to assault and battery to, sex crimes, to all different types of crimes. And the program related to every type of inmate. So no one came to that program and felt like they left without getting something from it. And I feel that if we could pass that message on before they become incarcerated, maybe they can turn a corner. Maybe they can, take a different path. Maybe they will start to think more about who they're hurting and what effect it has on them that they're doing. Because you guys know, for all of you guys and people that are listening to this that have done jail time, every inmate in the prison system are type A personalities, and they think they know everything. They can beat it. There's no way they're going to catch me next time. I had a guy that laid in a bunk right next to me, and he said, "You know what? I just found out you only get 2 years for the crime I committed if I do it out of Canada." Like, you, dude, you haven't even been sentenced yet. You haven't even been sentenced yet in the United States, and you're already planning your next crime out of Canada. Like, what's wrong with you?
I mean, or let
So
me
if
ask
we
you,
could,
so in that, like, a lot of the stuff now I hear you talking about doing it before, catching people before prison. I know for myself, like, I wasn't ready to hear shit about anything too in depth about myself. I thought I knew it all then, and it took prison to like go, oh, there's a whole, like, a paradigm shift, right? And going, oh, like, what? And I consider it one of the greatest blessings of my life. And don't wish it on anybody, and don't, I don't I got the lesson one time, I'm good. But like without that though, it would be, it'd be difficult. And I had done some things in the past and all that. Like how many people are really kind of ready in the world to hear the message of introspection and
that's a great theory, and it's a great thought, and it's a great question. And I'll answer it plain and simple.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single guy that came to Victim Impact with the idea that he was going to leave there and think different about what he did, who it affected, and how it applied to him. He came there to get a certificate.
Yeah,
he came there because his unit team, his case manager said, you need a program.
Right.
And they came there and they figured they could sit there and twiddle their thumbs, but not with Irv Stitsky in front of the room, because I made these guys participate. I pointed a finger and I said, hey, Seth, what about you? Or, hey, Rich, what about you? Or Divine, what do you think about that? I dragged them into the conversation. And before you know it, by the time we were in the 32nd week, guys were like this, raising their hand. Guys were volunteering. Guys were like, they were at the end asking, like, when an opening up was facilitating, can I get involved? It changed their lives because they saw a different angle of what they did.
So the idea here is let's sort of roll this thing out and let's scale it and let's reach people. The interesting thing is you Irv, and you did federal time, right, Seth?
Yep.
And I did. Did you do federal? Did you do state, D?
Oh, federal time, federal.
So the four of us did federal time, but that's really sort of an anomaly, because in fact, only about 9% of the criminal justice system is federal. There's this perception that
Really? Wow.
this big
It's
monolith.
bigger than that. Right.
People think of it like, the Defense Department or something. It's some big,
Sure.
cabinet position that oversees it all. When in fact, the action really is local. It's state, it's county, it's city, and it's town.
Wow.
And, when that happens, I live in, you're in New York, or you are in New York as I was, I'm in California. But when you look at all of the smaller towns and the smaller cities and the smaller counties, and you start to realize that they're not quite there yet, and they're not quite as progressive, and their attitude is not like, let's cure these people of their disease, as opposed to just lock these motherfuckers up and hopefully we never have to see them again.
Right.
So that's a challenge, but Irv, we should be working on your program. We have some great people who've been asking some interesting questions, including my friend Craig. Craig, are you around here? We'd love to have you join the conversation.
Craig's in the audience.
Craig
I'm right next to you, Richard. I'm right here.
There he is. Craig,
Craig.
this is
Hey, Divine.
this is a time for us to, share the experiences of some good people who have really gotten fucked over bad. And Craig's situation is really very, very that. Craig, you are facing right now, what sentence?
Well, I have a life sentence. I'm a first-time offender. I got a life sentence for conspiring to distribute marijuana back in 2002. And I've been a federal prisoner ever since.
And they recently let you out for the coronavirus, right?
Yes. So on June of this year, I left FCI Terre Haute, and I'm now home on home confinement. But at any time, they can call me back into the federal system. And they just went through on New Year's Eve, and they went through Terre Haute and gave vaccination shots to all the guards there. I don't know if you saw my posting. The reason they did it is they're scheduled to execute 3 people in the next 2 weeks there. And 2 of them are already positive for COVID on death row. They're afraid of the cops getting exposed.
Is Terre Haute a USP? Or you talking about the high?
It's a complex. It's a
Oh, okay.
complex. It's got a USP, a medium, and a camp.
Okay.
So the bottom line here is that Craig is currently serving a life or shooting up a church with his, what are you doing, Craig?
Showing us his socks now, his bracelet.
Oh, his bracelet. Okay, I didn't get that.
That's my GPS.
Okay, so I mean, we're laughing, but he's serving a life sentence for marijuana. I live in LA where they have these stores, these commissary, they call, what do they call them? Commissaries or something? And
Dispensaries.
dispensaries, excuse me. And they are like walking into Bloomingdale's. They are so
True.
beautiful, some of these stores. It's like walking into a Barney's store or something. And you walk in and attractive people who are attractively dressed or showing you their wares, but it's not Gucci, shoes and Louis Vuitton bags, but it's different brands of pot. Because in California, marijuana has been decriminalized. And in fact, it's a big business. But that doesn't really matter in your case, does it?
No, as a matter of fact, I had to take the train into downtown Chicago to go to the Bureau of Prisons doctor. As I'm walking down the sidewalk from the train station, I just had to stop right in front of the marijuana store because recreational marijuana is legal in Illinois. And I'm watching these people walk in and walk out carrying a bag, and I'm standing there with the GPS on my ankle, wondering what day they're going to call me back to Terre Haute.
Now, you laugh about this. It almost makes me think you must have stopped into that store and bought some of that stuff. How are you laughing when you're going through this? Or are you hoping that you're going to have an experience similar to Irv, and one day you're going to get the call and you're going to get the pardon?
I'm very much hoping for that. And to be honest, I brought my sponsor here tonight.
Hey, Craig.
And, my sponsor is down on the bottom that says Nadia Fisher down there. And she's actually here for information from Irv, from me, from prisoners, how prison works and all that. She's helping me with the president and with all the people close to the president to hopefully he won't be distracted anymore with the Capitol being attacked, and maybe he can sign some paperwork for us.
Well,
Craig, if I may, do you have anybody in the legal arena that's helping you with the whole first step back? And that, because I'm seeing a lot of lifer marijuana dealers getting a reduction in sentence and being released from prison. So have you filed any motions at all in court?
Yes, through very, very good lawyers, as a matter of fact. And my court's been working on it for years. It's a court down in Georgia that just won't answer it.
okay, I have a question for both of you guys. We all know, Irv, you were pardoned along with, I think, 32 other people or something like that. And, I'm thrilled that you got your pardon. There were also some people in that group that, these black water guys who were in Afghanistan, and they're driving in their Humvee, and some people are blocked. There's an intersection and they're tired of waiting, and they just shoot up the entire intersection. All these civilians, including a family that had a little kid in the back seat who was killed. They killed 17 people. And those guys got pardoned. But even beyond that, I read today in the New York Times that President Trump, who has been thinking about this, is now, after yesterday, thinking a lot harder about pardoning himself.
Not in your own ticket.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? I mean, you guys are pro pardon for sure, but is a pardon good for everybody, or is there just certain times when a pardon shouldn't happen?
Look, I'm going to jump on that before everybody else does, as an ex-inmate and somebody that has been really humbled and changed my lifestyle. Like right now, like I'm not chasing money like I used to. I don't care about the finer things. Like, sure, I want a roof over my head, and I want to be able to get up every day and live like a normal lifestyle. But in answer to that, there's so many people that are clogging up the prison system that are non-violent, collar guys. Look, I'm all for, and I hate to say this, but if a guy commits a violent crime and takes someone's life or commits a domestic violent crime and beats up some woman or abuses, sexually abuses a man, a woman, a child, or whatever like that, then I believe those people should serve some prison time and get some therapy, be worked, these prisons, especially in federal prisons, there's no rehabilitation there. It's almost voluntary. It's not mandatory. Like, guys are not really prepared to be released from prison. These guys are leaving. They're like, how many times I say to a guy that I'm mentoring, let me see a plan, write a plan. What are you going to do if they came and released you tomorrow? Like, are you going to go back to the street corner and sell nickel and dime bags of weed and crack and coke or whatever? What are you going to do to support yourself? And these guys are like, oh, I'll figure it out. And I'm like, no, you gotta have a plan. So getting back to the type of situation of a pardon, I quite frankly think that this crazy president should sit down and just start signing shit left and right. Anybody that's nonviolent, anybody that's got like a low-level nonviolent drug crime, anybody that's got a white-collar crime, anybody that's got, like, sign away. You got 175,000 federal inmates. You could lower that shit to 120.
Hey, and look, I'll take a pardon just to get my rights back.
Right.
Well, we listen. We know about you, Seth. I don't know if we should agree about that with you, Seth.
What?
I'm only messing with you, guy.
But if you notice, last year the federal prison population went down 23,000. So some of the laws are starting to take effect.
The law of coronavirus, being in prison is a petri dish, and people didn't receive a life sentence when they were sentenced. So you got to let them out. I mean, they should all be out.
But with the First Step Act that Jared Kushner was involved in implementing through the president, I will tell you this, that a lot of inmates are getting out on compassionate release and reviewing the circumstances under their cases, like Craig's. Like, a guy gets a life sentence for the distribution of marijuana. Like, give me a break. Alice Johnson had a life sentence, and it was a marijuana nonviolent drug offense.
That's my friend, my personal friend, Alice Johnson.
A grandmother.
Okay, well, Alice Johnson was instrumental in my release.
I met her through Ben and Felicia Horowitz. I actually met Alice in person. Great spirit.
Well, Alice was just one of the people, along with like Kim Kardashian and Alan Dershowitz and a lot of people who were lobbying, because they came up with the concept in my type of case, what was called trial penalty, where I was offered a plea of 7 to 9 years, and I ended up going to trial, and I got crushed.
Yeah, vindictive prosecution.
Right. So they made a presentation on this trial penalty, and look, I met a guy who was offered 5-year plea. He was a wealthy Orthodox Jewish guy, and he was in the middle of his trial, and he's like, listen, this is not going the way I want. And the guy fled. He just took his money and he left the country. And he was on the run for a couple of years. And they tracked him down, and he was in Austria, and they said to him, look, if you come back, while he was away, they sentenced him. And they sentenced him in trial in absentee, and they gave him 800 years.
Oh, man. That's worse than the 85 you got.
Well, I mean, it's all the same. Really. It's all the same. 85, 800, and
exactly. Hey, fuck it, 9,000. 9,000.
All right. So Craig asked a question, and I'm surprised that you of all people would ask this question. Craig wants to know where we hid the money. Okay?
Oh man,
every financial prisoner gets asked.
Okay,
that.
so let me tell you my story. Okay, if you didn't
want to hear this, Richard.
If you didn't already think I was
Let me get a pen. Can you drop that or what?
If you didn't think I was totally crazy before, you're going to really think I'm crazy. When I caught my case, And I was going through that. And by the way, if you get a case, my advice is go away to prison as quickly as you can, because the time that you're sitting around waiting to be sentenced and waiting to go away, you might as well be in prison and you might as well get credit for the time. So I dicked around for a couple of years, which was worse than being in prison. I paid everybody back that I robbed from, basically. And I paid back lots of fines and penalties and all kinds of shit. And I paid the attorneys zillions of dollars, me and my partner. And I still had a lot of money left over. And I was an art collector and I had this beautiful home and I had all kinds of stuff. I felt so bad and ashamed of myself, and I couldn't get rid of this feeling that A, I was looking forward to going away to prison, and B, I took all the money I had and I gave it all away, literally, to charity. I didn't save a penny, literally not a penny. Before you go away to prison, they do this pre-trial investigation.
Yes.
And
PSI.
they're gonna report to the judge. They've checked you out, and believe me, they know what they're doing. These people. If you've gotten the money hidden somewhere in the Cayman Islands, they know.
They'll find it.
They find it. They know what they're doing. I'm not that smart. And when I was in front of the judge, he said, "We've never seen a case like this before for a guy like you who was making millions of dollars, who doesn't have a penny to his name right now." And I did it. So Craig, there's no money hidden. I would ask Seth, ask Divine. We're always raising money and worried about money. If I had it, I'd get a night's sleep once in a while. So I don't have any.
Hey, Craig. Hey, Craig.
Yeah.
Can I borrow a shovel?
I want to chime in. I want to chime in on this because it's a perfect segue into what I wanted to ask. So, I've always been intrigued with financial crimes, at the highest level.
Be careful
Wall
with that
Street.
intrigue.
Yeah. So I watched The Wolf of Wall Street, a firm that you both were in, a partner in, or involved in,
Yes.
and crime life has this type of allure, if you would, right? Crime life has this allure. You're living the life. You got women. You got you got jewelry. You got cars. All these type of things. So I want to ask you guys, both of you guys. This is for you, Richard, you as well as Irv. What causes somebody at that high level of like Wall Street making this high level, like these big salaries? What causes you guys to want to veer to the left, if you would, and indulge in criminal activity in any type of form or fashion? Like, what is it? If you don't have enough, like, what is it for you, Richard, and what is it for you, Irv?
For me, I mean, you're talking about, well, you're doing well and you're making a lot of, I was making a lot of money to a great extent because I was breaking the law to make a lot of money.
Right.
Margins are higher.
The margins.
Right, but people think that if you're on Wall Street, you're making money anyway without committing crime.
But nothing like I was making. I mean, I couldn't have done that legally unless I gave it 20 years, and I wasn't. I was greedy. Is the answer? I wish I had a better answer for you. I was greedy. And
that's fine. No, that's fine.
And impatient.
There is no better answer. There is no better answer.
Same thing, Irv. Same thing with you, Irv. Same answer.
You know what? When you start making the money, you start to think, how can I make more? How can I, can I buy a bigger house? Can I buy another car? Can I take another trip? Can I buy another watch? Can I, and it got to a point where, like, it just wasn't never enough.
Right.
And you know what? When it's all taken away from you, and like Rich said, we don't have, like, I made a joke, where's the shovel so I could, dig up the buried treasure? I'd be looking for treasure because I don't have anything buried. I didn't think it would ever end. I just thought this was something that was going to keep going on. And you know what? There were times that I lost sleep because I developed a rapport with a guy on the phone that I knew he couldn't possibly come out ahead. Like I took over clients of the firm that were losing money from other brokers. Right. When I took them over, I had the gift of gab, and I got them to throw more money into bad money. And I would lose sleep over it for a while until I bought my next car, or I bought a new, I threw a party
or
Right.
took drugs and got fucked up and
Right.
blurted all out,
Right.
which is
Okay,
what
well,
I
And when
did.
it came
well,
to
thanks for answering that question.
when that life ended for me, you know, I realized everything that I did in my past. You know, you said, did I learn my lesson? A question that you asked before. I learned a very valuable lesson, and you know what? That my family and my close friends and that niche group of people that I surrounded myself with, who really stuck by me during this time, are very, very, very valuable to me. And I would do everything in my power to make sure. I mean, like my probation, I don't even have they haven't even assigned a probation officer to me. And they hate me there already because I'm calling them and listen, I'm
Like,
leaving the
yo.
room. I'm leaving the room. And they were like, you don't have to call me to tell me you're leaving the room. Are you trying to leave like the state of New York for a minute? And I'm like, no, I'm going up the street to get like a taco. You know, and the guy's like, listen, stop calling me. You know, I'm so compliant and I'm afraid to even go to work. Like guys are offering me jobs and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out for a little while just till I get acclimated and reconnect with my children. And, you know, I've had numerous grandchildren that have been born. I miss weddings. You know, I miss connecting with my, you know, my daughter-in-laws and my son-in-laws.
You have 4 children, you said?
I have
earlier?
4 children, 6 grandchildren, you know.
Wow.
So and I developed a relationship with a woman while I was in prison who was just wonderful. And we're together now.
Great.
And you know, we're planning our lives together. So it's like, you know, my life has changed. And I'm a very humble man and I want to give back and I want to be there for my kids and my grandkids. And I want to teach them more about, you know, being a humble person and thanking God every day for the things that they do have. And, you know.
And Commissary Club supports you.
Pardon me?
Commissary Club supports you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
That's why we
that.
exist. Community.
You know something? Scrubbing 100 toilets a day for some guy, you know, if that doesn't humble you a little bit, then you're hopeless.
Nothing will.
You know,
12 cents an hour, Richard. 12 cents an hour. Working for
12
cents
cents
an hour.
Exactly. It's so funny.
I worked myself up over 11 years. I made $46 a month, guys.
Wow.
Don't knock it.
I made 100. I was in unicorn. I made 100, buddy.
There you go.
Yeah, you guys were ballers in prison. All I know is the idea of me. Now I drive what do I drive? A Acura. I used to drive Ferraris and all kinds of wild cars.
Right,
And now
exotic
the
cars.
idea of even getting in and out of a Ferrari, I can't even imagine how I would do it and how embarrassing that would be. And I got news for you. The Ferrari was always in the shop. The Acura works. It gets me to where I want to go.
Right.
It's an easier life, you know?
Right.
Good
It's an
for
easier
you,
life.
Good for you. I'm huffing it, buddy.
You are? All right. Well, that's not going to be forever.
Well, it's almost
Right,
like you
at least-
achieve what you. It's almost like you achieve what you want to achieve at the highest level. And then when you lose it all, you realize that you really don't even need all that.
It didn't matter. It really didn't matter.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
A good night's sleep is better for me. You know, the respect of people who I admire is much more important to me.
Right.
I want to go to heaven, you
No
know?
feds are kicking in your door, 5 a.m.
Yeah, and having people hearing clicking on the phone and all this shit. You went through that, right, Craig?
Listen, hey, Divine, we used to have guys get up in front of the room and they would say rape and pillage the villages because someone else is going to do it. And you know what? At least when you go to hell, you're going to be driving a Bentley or a Ferrari. You know, those days are over, buddy.
Exactly.
Nobody on this telecast here or this podcast, I'm not really familiar with the terminology, but nobody here believes that anymore. What we believe in is camaraderie. We believe in supporting one another. We believe in, you know, for the greater good, and we want to fight for our brothers and our fellow you know, friends and family that are in need. So
well, I will say this. I will say this, Irv. You have a very polarizing personality, and I really believe that you can really change. You can really take this opportunity to elevate this to the highest level for yourself and change your life and continue on that pathway. And I hope that you do. And I support that. and I really want to see you win.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right on, right on. And that's true of our friend Craig. I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
what you're going through, and it's not over, there's no happy ending yet. How do you smile when this is hanging over you? When any day they could say to you, okay, Craig, time to go back and fulfill your lifetime sentence. Do you not really believe that could happen, or do you? You do. You're muted, I think, Craig. Yeah, you're muted, Craig. Oh,
Well,
there you
if,
go.
Okay,
if
but
Craig,
yes, I very much know it can. And again, I still have faith in the system, and hopefully I've got enough people helping me now to make it so the system will work for me. That's my faith, and that's how I keep smiling. Rather than, complaining about that they could call me tomorrow or they could come lock me up tomorrow. I just want to have faith that that system will work. Maybe even the clemency system will work.
Yeah.
Craig, just listen. It's a lot easier to fight that you're home now on home confinement, and don't give up the fight, and believe that the laws are changing, the statutes are changing,
Right.
and that, you're in a strong position to fight from where you're at, because just keep your nose clean, stay away from those little stores that you walk by that smell good. Okay. and keep away from that, and stay clean, and report to your probation, and do what you have to do, and show them that you're not a threat to society, and that you're not, you don't believe in that old lifestyle, and you'll find that path, and it'll work out for you. And God bless you. I wish you the best, man.
God bless both of you guys. And Craig, I can't wait to have you on after you get that pardon or that clemency. So it's about time for us to wrap it up tonight. The hour and a half went really quickly. I, thank God that Irv, you're out, and I wish everybody came out. I can't tell you how, and you have a responsibility, like Divine said. If there's any good to come out of this, if this meant anything at all, it is for you to work and to try to help your brothers and sisters who are in prison or coming out, and take what you've learned. It's good for your karma. Do it. Don't just do it now because it's fresh in your mind. Do it in a year from now, and you have so much to offer. You have a strong personality that can make shit happen. And Craig, we love having you here, but I'd love it to be, that you've done your time and you're done finally, and we can hang out, and because you don't fucking deserve anything that you're going through at all. We have a site called Commissary Club, and on Commissary Club, we help folks with employment, and we help folks with housing and education, but mostly we help to create community. When you come out of jail or prison, if you're on probation, you're under supervised release. And part of the terms of your release are you're not supposed to be connecting with other people with a record. If there was ever a time that you needed help and you needed to talk to people like that, they don't want you to do it. We want to connect people. We believe that there's 70 million of us with records, and that if we all got together, we could elect any president we wanted. We could have companies that would be marketing to us and meeting our needs. 1 out of 3 adults have a record. It's no longer whether the monster's in prison. It's no longer them versus us. Them is us. And we all need, people who have been through this, to look after each other. We need to help each other. We need to provide the hookup, the connections, the insights we've gained, the businesses that we're working at that could use another person. We need to do it because no one is going to fucking do it for us. We need to look after each other. And if we speak in one voice and say enough is enough, we're not second-class citizens. We've done our time. And it's time for us to move on with our lives. So I really appreciate everybody who has spent time with us tonight. We'll be back again next week. Please join the conversation, connect with people, make some friends, find some inspiration, be an inspiration. And we'll be back again next week with somebody else or a couple of people who I guarantee will also just be amazing people that we want to share with you. So everybody stay safe, okay? And we look forward to, a time when human beings are treated like human beings and have the opportunity to lead a productive life, which is all any of us want. So thanks a lot for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Irv. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
joining.
you.
You guys-
Richard,
guys
Steph,
are
Irv.
strong.
comrades.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Richard.
Bye, guys.